Hi everyone! Today I'm going to discuss The Lost Boys and its two sequels, The Tribe and The Thirst. And also I'm going to bring up the comic book as well because there are some continuity issues I'm going to bring up. We get a sequel 21 years later in 2008 called The Lost Boys, The Tribe. You might have already guessed it, but this is not a good movie. Now, mind you, I went into this movie with extremely low expectations, and somehow this movie managed to exceed my expectations while disappointing me in the end anyway. In this sequel, brother and sister Chris and Nicole Emerson moved to Luna Bay, now Santa Carla, where their aunt rents them a place to live since their parents had died in a car accident. Now, it's implied but never stated that these are the kids of Michael and Star from the first movie. That's the impression I think anyone would get since their last name is Emerson. The movie actually starts with a scene with this movie's group of vampires, the Tribe. It's a surfer gang, and in the opening sequence they end up killing Tom Savini's cameo character by gutting him and cutting his head off. So right off the bat, this movie's way gorier than the original Lost Boys. The Tribe of surfers, and coincidentally, Chris Emerson, are all former pro surfers, and it turns out that they all know each other from surfing competitions. Chris is standing on a pier when Shane, the head vampire, played by Angus Sutherland, pops up out of nowhere. This is a pretty abandoned place and ends up being nowhere near the vampire hideout, but it's just the first in a recurring series of "isn't that convenient" scriptwriting. Before I keep going, if you caught the name Sutherland, it's not a coincidence. Angus Sutherland is Kiefer Sutherland's half-brother. Obviously, Kiefer couldn't come back for a role in this since he's aged 21 years in the interim between these two movies. However, Corey Feldman does return as Edgar Frog for this. Funny story, I spent the last 14 years thinking Angus Sutherland was one of the other vampires in the Tribe. I thought it was the one who looked at least somewhat similar to Kiefer Sutherland. But no, it's Shane Powers, the lead vampire, who looks like Kiefer about as much as any blonde man would. Anyway, Shane invites Chris and Nicole to a party when Chris gets distracted by a surfer groupie who is obviously a vampire, while Shane takes Nicole up to his room where they talk about normal first date stuff like death, and then Shane offers her a flask to drink from, which, if you ever saw Lost Boys, you can guess it's actually blood and you'd be right. Eventually, Chris and Nicole head home. Nicole is already turning into a half-vampire, which is happening way faster than it showed in the original movie. She's about to attack Chris when Edgar Frog comes in to save him and explains what's going on. And isn't that convenient? Seriously, why is Edgar Frog there at just the right moment inside their house? He's never even met these people. Soon after, Nicole wanders off somewhere to cry because she's a vampire but she's actually a vegetarian. And Edgar leaves with a "it's your funeral" line like he gave Sam Emerson in the original Lost Boys. The surfer groupie shows up to their house to finish the sex she didn't get to have with Chris, and then she tries to bite him, and he ends up accidentally impaling her on the antlers, like in the original Lost Boys. I'm gonna say like the original Lost Boys a lot in this podcast, and every time this happened in the movie, I was scoffing and rolling my eyes. It's too much of a crutch, guys. Like, please stop, we get it. Also, isn't it convenient that the vampire groupie knew where they lived? I mean, I guess she could have flown after them from the party, but we don't see that. She just shows up out of nowhere. Chris goes to get help from Edgar the next day, and Edgar explains about vampires, and he uses the same comic book from the original Lost Boys, Destroy All Vampires. They form a plan to make Nicole human again. Meanwhile, new vampire power, I guess, Shane calls Nicole to him telepathically, and she goes to his secret hideout even though she's never been there before. To listen to the rest of this podcast, please find Reboot the Sequel on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Podcasts.